Kazuha is shocking with Mona Vaporize. How will Kazuha change the way you use and think about Mona? As we are all aware, Mona can vaporize big damage numbers, but with a catch though, that she needs to wait 2 seconds before making it all happen. What if I told you that Mona can change up her conventional methods through using Kazuha? For the current and future content soon to come, I see a great potential for Kazuha in the Mona Vaporize team. Kazuha alone can provide an elemental damage bonus based on his elemental mastery, which is dependent on whichever element he swells. In this video I will cover the following. What makes Mona and Kazuha work so well together? How do you create a vaporize hit with Mona using Kazuha? What is stagger resistance? Very briefly, purposely missing Kazuha's initial slash burst. C2 Kazuha, is it necessary? And at what point would I ever need to use this? So when would I need to use this? Through the various team comps of Kazuha with Mona, whether that be Vaporize, Freeze or Electrocharge, I feel that Vaporize is the strongest winner for Mona. I've taken quite a liking to Kazuha's kit. It provides more convenience and stability for Mona. His burst has a large radius range. This allows his infused burst to reach enemies from afar. This would mean enemies scattered around within the burst are able to take specific infused swell elements as damage. His elemental skill provides a small suction that reels in small or medium-sized enemies. He provides an elemental damage boost with the element he has swelled. The elemental damage boost is based on his elemental mastery. A lot of these factors expand Mona's ability to use her Vaporize burst. You can skip to the topics that you are specifically interested in, though I would suggest to stay throughout the entire video where I'll be providing the relevant information you would need to hopefully fully understand why Mona and Kazuha work very well together. An important question is, but wouldn't you just rather use Sucrose? Indeed, Sucrose is a very valuable character. However, the main purpose of her in a Mona Vaporize team is to provide elemental swell shred, elemental mastery boost, crowd control through her skill and burst, and an attack buff, whether you are using the Thrilling Tales on her. Sucrose has a very solid kit to begin with. However, testing with Kazuha, he provides a lot more flexibility for Mona, especially when you have certain characters paired up with him too. I have always loved Amino characters that instantly infuse elemental swell based on their affliction. I understand that Sucrose and Venti can do this, but the catch is that their bursts are directional, meaning that you need to direct the position of their burst, whereas for Kazuha and Jean, it's just an instant Amino burst that casts a circular AoE based on your current position. Having an Amino burst that provides a circular AoE based on your current position really helps you out to control the battle. At times when you're not paying attention, Sucrose and Venti's elemental bursts can aim in directions you don't intend. This would be very messy for Mona having to deal with this in a Vaporize team. How do you create a Vaporize hit with Mona and Kazuha? First off, Bennett is a must. There are basically multiple ways we can do this. So here are the two. First, we need to understand the enemy's stagger resistant windows and use these small windows to set up the Mona Vaporize combo with Kazuha. Second, using Zhongli or Albedo for elevation, we can essentially use Kazuha to vaporize multiple enemies within his burst radius. How? Well, I'll cover this a bit more deeply in the purposely missing Kazuha's initial burst part of the video. So let's start with the first method, which is taking advantage of shielded or high stagger resistance enemies. This is a very heavy topic, which I will try to condense this very simply to digest. Here is a list of the current following enemies that have shields or have high stagger resistance in Genshin Impact 1.6. You would need to understand where their windows are, like the Magyu Kenki's attack cycles. More details about that in my previous video. Good thing is, you don't need Kazuha to take advantage of this aspect. You can do it with any pyro character. Stagger resistance, to put it simply, every character and enemy in this game possesses a stagger value within their attack or self. Sometimes it's not very clear visual indicators, but it is there. These stagger resistant windows on enemies can range from as little as 2 to 7 seconds. The Mona mains are putting together a document to help the community to understand which enemies do have the stagger resistance in certain areas of their attack cycles. The rotation against stagger resistance enemies is very flexible to the extent of how long the window is. For example, these Geo Visharps take several seconds of jumping into the air. While they are in the air, they have a very high stagger resistance and cannot be interrupted during this. Within this window, you can essentially start up your Mona's burst, swirl and apply pyro, and keep that pyro constantly applied onto them, and wait till the end of their stagger resistance animation, or Mona's bubble will time out and it will just cause vaporize reaction. The rotation is very flexible indeed with Kazuha, but this is just a general example. Would follow or change it up. You can also do this with Sucrose and Jean. Venti might be a bit harder to pull off though. Let's move on to purposely missing Kazuha's slash. You're probably wondering, what do you mean by this? Wouldn't we want to hit enemies with it? But here's a fact. Hitting the enemies with his initial slash will pop Mona's bubble, dealing raw hydro damage onto non-high stagger resistance enemies. Essentially, Mona can vaporize multiple enemies through Kazuha's burst fused with Swell DOT AoE. But the catch is that it requires Bennett, Zhongli or Albedo to make it all happen. Funny enough, call it the Mona Pillar meta or Pillar Gaming. This is a limitation to technical capability for Mona, but if you do have these characters, it opens up new pathways for your Mona to easily vaporize more enemies that do not have high stagger resistance. Yes, like they do not have high stagger resistance. I hate to admit it, but this technique is limited to characters that provide you the elevation. What does that mean? We would need to essentially elevate Kazuha's position higher than the enemy's hitbox height. I would assume that Kazuha's initial slash is a very linear cut, hitting enemies all around him, but once he is elevated, this slash can miss enemies that are not taller than Zhongli's or Albedo's elevation through their elemental skill. However, for enemies that are taller than Zhongli's pillar or Albedo's flower, this will not work. We can take advantage of this by purposely missing Kazuha's initial slash while vaporizing enemies through his AoE DOT damage. So here's an explanation of the rotation. If you're using Zhongli, it's going to be a lot easier than Albedo. You can simply cast out Zhongli's elemental skill, Bennett's burst, followed by, or Mona's burst, either way, doesn't matter. Preferably Mona's first, so we can ignore the 2-second wait. At this point, you would need to pay attention to the enemies or elemental auras. We can see that they have hydro applied onto them, but it is removed by Zhongli's pillar with crystallize. This removes the hydro auras from enemies, which then you can follow up with Kazuha's burst, intentionally missing the enemies and causing vaporize with his DOT AoE. You can actually build Zhongli's Millerith or Petra set now. Because of this method, you actually get the hydro damage bonus instantly without having to really pick it up. For Albedo, you may need to change it up a bit. I don't have him to demonstrate, unfortunately, but here is the rotation idea. Drop down one elemental skill from him, apply Pyro first onto enemies with Bennett's Burst, then Mona Burst, elevate yourself, then Kazuha slash. This will wipe out all enemies within his range. I really do think Kazuha is really useful for the Mona Vaporize. Since Mona's burst is a circular AoE, having Kazuha in the team only expands that circular AoE, securing a multi-vaporizing Mona setup. This can already be done with other pyro units as well. Kazuha provides a lot of control. We know that Venti provides a lot of crowd control, but what do I mean by control for Kazuha? He definitely can't beat Venti when it comes to crowd control, but he can definitely provide more stability and control to your elements, whether that be elements that are afflicted onto you or to the enemy. This is very vital for a Mona Vaporize setup, where Mona Vaporize would need you to be very attentive to these elemental auras on enemies. C2 Kazuha and is it necessary? If you had watched this entire video throughout the start to the end, you will understand how it's not just the elemental mastery boost from his C2. It's about his technical ability to set new opportunities for Mona. C2 is just a nice way of enhancing your damage. Take this example where I used a C0 Kazuha with Iron Sting to achieve 955k vaporize damage, whereas my C2 with the new weapon banner sword gave me about 200k boost. That isn't much of a difference unless you plan to one-shot these highly saturated HP bosses. Is C0 Kazuha worth it? That is up to you to decide through the information I have provided you today. So at what point would I need to use this? And an example of this is the Vagabond Legends. This has been quite an eye-opener and a taste of what kind of challenging content will soon to come. We can already start to see new enemies incorporating this type of stagger resistance mechanics. Kazuha himself in general is good to have. He basically supports future-proofing Mona. Take Tenten's Kaching Main's Theory Crafter's advice.
You can make some of your team even stronger than before and open up new path for you. More importantly, he is very future-proof. I still feel like he has a lot of undiscovered potential currently in the game.
A valuable statement made by Tenten. At the moment, a lot of these one-shots are quite unnecessary at the moment, and I would only use this in certain circumstances. But having Mona and Kazuha allows you and me to be fully equipped with the flexibility of still being able to one-shot enemies like Eula, but with Mona. Just a bit harder to execute. But now, once was, the past of having to Mona Vaporize single target enemies, we can now use Mona and Kazuha together to multi-target vaporizing enemies. Hope this video has helped you to understand that no longer we need to follow the standard methods of Mona Vaporize, and that using certain characters with Kazuha can expand Mona's opportunities. So please, tell your friends, tell your family just how amazing Mona is now with Kazuha. Thanks again.